Hi, welcome to my video on review number 3, Solve Trig Equations, and that's the videos from 18 to 24. And this review can be marked at a 45, with a total of 45, and this is the first one of 5 pages, and there's 4 more to do, so there's going to be 4 questions to do as a review. Solve for theta. Theta 0 is less than or equal to theta, less than 360. So we have to solve in the degrees between 0 and 360 and equal to 0. Well, we have sine and cos as denominators. So the first thing I would do is sine theta cannot be equal to 0. And cos theta cannot be equal to 0. And the reason for that is that if you have sine or cos equal to 0 in the denominator, it makes the fraction undefined, so we can't have it. So here's the circle, 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. So sine is the y, and y is 0 at, you cannot have y is 0 at 0 degrees and at 180 degrees, and we can't put in 360 because it's not equal to. And cos is the x, and theta cannot be equal to x. Cos is 0 at the 90, so we can't have a 90, or we can't have a 270 because it makes the denominator 0. So let's solve this equation. So that's because remember, when you have fractions, the denominator can't be 0 because then they'd be extraneous roots and they won't fit. Let's cross multiply. Cos theta equals 2 sine theta plus 1, and 1 times sine theta plus cos theta. So cross multiply like doing the x. So cos times 2 sine is 2 cos theta sine theta. Cos times 1 is cos theta. 1 times sine is sine. And 1 times cos is cos. And again, theta is the angle. And we have that done. So now we look and see that we have cos on both sides. So we'll cancel them out. We subtract them. So that means that 2 cos theta sine theta, and this is a quadratic because degree of cos is 1, degree of sine is 1, so we have to move all the expressions to the left side and factor. So we have it done. Notice that the GCF is sine theta, so we removed the GCF of sine theta. 2 cos theta sine theta divided by sine is 2 cos theta. And sine theta divided by sine is 1, and it's a negative. And we have 2 factors, so sine theta is equal to 0, or 2 cos theta minus 1 equals 0. And this one is already solved, so let's solve this one. Cos theta equals 1, minus 1 moves over to become a plus, divide by 2, so cos theta equals a half. So sine theta is 0, so sine is 0 at, as we see up here, we already did it, sine is 0 at 0 degrees and 180 degrees. And cos is a half. Cos is add sugar to coffee. Cos is positive in 1 and 4. So let's look at in quadrant 1. And let's look at in quadrant 4. Quadrant 1, terminal arm perpendicular to the x-axis. Quadrant 4, terminal arm goes out perpendicular to the x-axis. Cos is the x, so x here is 1/2, and the x here is 1/2, and the other side is root 3 over 2, and root 3 over 2 but here the y is positive and here the y is negative. Hypotenuse is 1, radius up the circle. Opposite the root 3 over 2 is a 60-degree angle. Opposite the root 3 over 2 is a 60-degree angle, and the other angle is 30 and 30, but we want the reference angle. So the reference angle for each of these is 60 degrees. So because we're in the first quadrant, theta is the reference angle, so theta is 60. Because we're in the fourth quadrant, theta is 360 minus the reference, which is 60. So that's a 300-degree angle. And we check all the answers. So what's the answer? So theta is 0 can't be used because it's undefined. 180 can't be used because it makes the denominator 0. So the only answers we can use are 60 and 300. And if you have this done for the extraneous roots you can't use, give yourself a mark. If you have multiplied out correctly to here, give yourself a mark. Cross multiplied, give yourself a mark. If you simplified it to here, give yourself a mark. If you factored it, give yourself a mark. And if you made each of the factors equal to 0, you give you a mark each. If you did these answers, you give yourself a mark each. And if you come up with these final answers, give yourself a mark. So 8 marks altogether. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So notice we have 8 marks altogether. And mark a score out of 8. And question done. Let's solve another one. Solve for theta with 0 is less than or equal to theta less than 2 pi. Okay, we had to solve it. So first of all, we had to remove the brackets. So 1/3 sine times 12 is 4 sine. 1/3 sine times 3 sine. 1/3 times 3 is 1. Sine times sine is sine squared. And we're subtracting, but if we put a 1 here, it makes it easier. Negative 1 times 4 sine is negative 4 sine. Negative 1 times positive 2 sine squared is a negative 2 sine squared. Theta equals negative 1. And now we have to, can we simplify? Yes, we simplify each side before we, so 1 minus 2 is negative sine squared theta equals negative 1. So I simplify this side. These cancel out, they're negative, and 1 and negative 2 is negative 1. And we multiply by negative 1, so sine theta equals 1 to get rid of the negative. And we can either do the square root or we can factor. Your choice. We can go sine theta plus 1. We can do sine theta minus 1 equals, if I do that, I have to move, if I factor, I have to move the 1 to the left side and make it negative. Then I get to, but if I just do this way and do the square root of both sides, if I do the square root of both sides, then I don't have to move it. So it would be your choice. So if you do it this way, you do the square root, you get sine is plus or minus 1. So that means sine theta equals 1, or sine theta equals negative 1. If you factor, you move it over and make it a negative 1. And the factor difference of 2 squares, so you let each of the factors equal 0. Because it's a quadratic, 2 possible sets of answers. And continue with this one because we're factoring, minus 1. And right here, sine is plus 1. So that's, now I have these two answers. These two here are the same as those two. So it depends on which way you want to go. No matter which way you go, if you use the circle, which is this one, again we got 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. Sine is the y, and y is negative 1 right there. So that means theta is equal to 270 degrees. And right here, sine is 1, sine is the y is 1 at 90. But notice we want the answer in terms of radians, but I do degrees first. So 270 degrees, 270 is 270 times pi over 180. And the zeros cancel, divide by 10. 3, 6 and 18 goes 3, 6 into 27. I said 6 and 18 goes 3. How about 9? 9 into 9. 9 into 18 goes 2. 9 to 27 goes 3. 6 won't go into 27, but 3 will. So let's divide by 9. So as a radiant, we get 3 pi over 2. And 90 is 90 times pi over 180. And 90 goes to 90 once. 90, 180 goes 2. So 90 is pi over 2. And that gives us all the answers. So if you have those answers, and let's see, if you want to give out the marks, if you multiply this one, you get a mark. If you multiply this correctly, you get the mark. If you simplified to here, you get a mark. And coming down through, depending on which way you go, if you canceled and got the negative, get rid of the negative, you got a mark. And if you had these two, either one of these two, but working your way down, if you get these, and depends on which way you go, how the marks are distributed, but as long as you end up with these two here, and you end up with your, if you want to do degrees first and then do the radians, it's a total of 10 marks if you got the final answers. Okay. And another one to do, solve for theta, negative 180 less than or equal to theta, less than or equal to 0. And we got to check our answers after we get the answers. So notice this is negative. So that means what I'm going to do, because this is negative, I'm going to get all the answers in terms of positives first, convert them to a negative, and see which ones fit. So here we go. Now, notice we got 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So we have to do this by grouping. And in the first 2 terms, I see a 2 and a cos, theta. So 4 cos sine divided by 2 cos is 2 sine theta. And negative 2 root 3 cos divided by 2 cos, 2's cancel, cos cancels, is a negative root 3. Now, I need to take out, there's a plus right there, so put down a plus. So what am I going to remove from here? But if this is going to work, this is what we call think a little bit. If this is going to factor like with 4 terms, this should be 2 sine theta minus root 3. Because if this one here and this one here are not the same, I won't be able to take this binomial GCF out. So what do I take out of these two to get this? So I noticed I got 2 sine theta and I got 2 root 2 sine theta. So that means I'm removing the root 2. So 2 root 2 sine theta, take out the root 2, I get 2 sine theta. And negative root 6 divided by root 2 is a negative root 3. And this is okay. I notice I cheated a little bit. I got stumped a bit, but I knew if this was going to work, this factor here had to be the same as this one. So putting this in and then seeing what comes out of these two, you see there's just a root 2. So 2 sine theta minus root 3 is the binomial GCF. You take that out, you're left with 2 cos theta in the first one. If you take it at the second one, you're left with a plus root 2 equal to 0. That means that 2 sine theta minus root 3 is equal to 0. Or 2 cos theta plus root 3 is equal to 0. And we solve this to sine theta equals root 3 divided by 2. Sine theta is equal to root 3 over 2. And we do the same here. 2 cos theta equals negative root 2 divided by root 2. And cos theta is equal to negative root 2 over 2. Okay, so now we have to work out each of these. And we're going to add sugar to coffee. So sine is positive in 1 and 2. So I'm going to draw the diagram in 1 and 2. There's a circle. There's a circle. Draw the terminal arm in quadrant 1 perpendicular to the x-axis. And in quadrant 2, terminal arm perpendicular to the x-axis. Sine is the y. So the y is root 3 over 2. The y is root 3 over 2. And again, that's a 1, and that's a half. And that's a negative a half, because x is negative on this side, and that's a 1. Opposite root 3 over 2 is a 60. So the reference angle is 60. So that means that theta in the first quadrant is the reference angle. And in the second quadrant, theta is 180 minus the reference, which is 60. So that's 120. Now we have to do cos is a negative root 2 over 2. And again, let's look at add sugar to coffee. And cos is negative. Cos is positive in 1 and 4. So it's negative in 2 and 3. So we have to draw this diagram in quadrant 2 and in quadrant 3. Terminal arm in quadrant 2 perpendicular to the x-axis. Terminal arm in quadrant 3 right here perpendicular to the x-axis. Cos is the x, so x is the negative root 3 over 2. Negative root 2 over 2. And this negative root 2 over 2, this x is the negative root 2 over 2. That means the hypotenuse is 1, radius of the circle is 1. This side here is root 2 over 2. And this side here is the negative root 2 over 2. And since the root 2 over 2 for both sides, the reference angle for both of these triangles is 45. Reference angle is 45. So theta is, right here, it's 180 minus the reference, which is 45. So that's 135. And theta here is 180 plus the reference of 45. So it's 225. So now we have the answers, but all these answers are positive. We need the answer between negative 180 and 0. So 60, if you went with 60, the negative answer here would be a negative 320, because that's negative 360, and take off 60. And if this one is 120, right here positive, so the negative one would be a negative 240 going the other way. So if that's 120, then that's 240 here, because 240, 120 gives you 360, so it's negative 240. And this one right here, the negative, if you got a negative 135, so it's a negative 225. If you got a negative 2, or you get a positive 225, then that must be theta is negative 135. So remember, 135 positive, and the negative 220 is 360 altogether. So if you add them, you can't add them together. You got to do the rotation. The positive one, the negative one end up in the same spot, but they should add up to be 300 in all. So we have to take the answer that lies between negative 180 and 0. Negative 180 and 0. Negative 180 and 0. So the answer is So the answer to this problem is a negative 135. Okay, so let's check the answer. Cos theta sine theta minus 2 root 3. So what I'm doing, I'm writing down the equation now. And I'm going to check to see if we're all right. And there's only one answer, which is the negative 35. So we're going to put a negative 135 in here. So negative 135 is this one right here. So notice in this quadrant, both cos and sine are the same numbers. So the negative 135, so this is the cos of negative 135, sine of negative 135. And again, I'm just putting the negative 135 in each of these angles. And as I said, the cos of a negative 135 is negative root 2 over 2. The sine is the y, which is negative root 2 over 2. So I just go through and fill them all in with negative root 2 over 2's. Sine of negative 135, negative root 2 over 2. Now I have to do PEMDAS. I have to multiply these two, multiply these two, multiply these two. That's a root 6 right there. So root 6 we leave alone. So let's multiply these. 2 times 2 is 4. They cancel. So negative times negative is positive. Root 2 times root 2 is 2. The 2's cancel. And negative root 3 times negative root 2 is a positive root 6. And the 2's cancel. And that gives me a negative root 2 times negative root 2 is a negative 2. The 2's cancel. So negative times positive is a negative number. Root 2 times root 2 is 2. And I have a negative root 6 over here. And so notice, they cancel out. They cancel out. So 0 equals 0. So that's checking the answer. And there's 13 marks altogether. So the 10 marks are assigned. Let's go down through them. See if I can put the marks. So if you factored this one here, you get a mark. If you factor this one, you get a mark. If you did this factoring here, you get a mark. If you wrote each of these is equal to 0, you get a mark, like right here, just one mark. So now we have to solve them out. So if you solve them out, you get a mark. If you come up with these answers, you get a mark each. If you come up with the final answer, so there's 10. And if you did your checking right, you get 3, so 13 total. Hopefully everything is going well. Signing the marks depends on the teacher. I just put a mark for every step you do, or try to put a mark for every step. And the last one to do is find all possible values of theta in terms of pi. That's radiant. So first thing I do is, well, let's check what we're not allowed to have. Let's see. Okay, check that. Cot is cos squared over sine squared. Cot is cos over sine, so cot squared is cos squared over sine squared. Cot is cos theta over sine theta. And cosecant is 1 over sine equals 2. Secant is 1 over cos times cos. So we have it all changed. Now we simplify each of these. So we have to do product, division, and the product. So we do this first. So when we're multiplying, we cancel. So that gives us cos squared theta. So what I'm going to do now is take this one and simplify it down here. Show you cos theta divided by sine, all over 1 over sine. So that's cos theta over sine. When you're dividing, you multiply by the reciprocal. So it's sine theta over 1. Dividing two fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. 1 over sine becomes sine over 1. Sines cancel, and you get a cos. So that simplifies to a negative cos. Simplify it here or on the side, and then you don't have to write down so many steps. And you're multiplying these, you cancel because you got fractions, so you get a 2. Now, we got a quadratic, so we have to move all the terms to the left side. So the minus plus 2 becomes a minus 2. Because we got a quadratic, we're going to factor. So cos squared is cos squared theta. Cos squared theta is cos theta times cos theta. The product is negative 2, so it's 2 times 1. Since the product is negative and the sum is negative, I must have a plus and a minus, so I need to have a negative 2 and a plus 1. Because when you multiply, you get negative 2. When you add negative 2 and 1, you get a negative 1. So now we have two possible factors equal to 0. And we solve. Cos theta equals 2. And cos theta equals negative 1. And cos, there's no solution here because the graph for cos goes between negative 1 less than or equal to cos theta less than or equal to 1. And just a little tiny graph. The cos graph goes 1, 0, yes, 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. The cos graph is a sideways C, 1, negative 1, up to 360. And so you can't have a 2, so that's why there's no solution. And we got the circle, 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. Cos is the x, and x is negative 1 at the 180. And we have to change it to radians. And the radians for 180 is just a pi. 180 times pi over 180. 180's cancel, you get a pi. But we have to look back, and what we got to look at is that notice we got sine and coses on the bottom. So sine cannot be 0. And sine is 0 at 0 degrees and 180 degrees, which is the same as 0 radians and pi radians. And cos theta cannot be 0. Remember, cos is in the bottom. We can't have it. Sine is in the denominator. We can't have it. So cos theta can't be 0. That means theta at 0, that's at 90 and 180, which is the same as cannot have 90 is pi over 2, 180 is pi, so we can't have those two. So the answer is we have no solution here. And right here we got this answer here is what we can't have, so therefore we have no solution here because we can't use pi, or we can't have 180 because they're restricted. So that means the solution to the problem, there's no solution to this problem. And we have 14 marks. Let's see if we can, for doing this, for doing the restrictions, you get a mark. For changing these to sine squared over sine squared, cos squared over sine squared, and cot to cos over sine, and secant to 1 over cos, and et cetera. There's a mark. And let's see. And we simplify each of these expressions, a mark here and a mark here and a mark here. If you made it equal to 2, then you get a mark. If you factored it correctly, you get a mark. If you get 2 and a -1, you get a mark. If you get no solution here, if you get these two, you get a mark. And if you say there's no solution here, you get a mark. And the final answer is a mark. So 14 marks altogether. Judge yourself. Most teachers won't give so many marks. They probably get marked at a 7 or 8, but the marks, smaller number of marks, but it means the same thing. So that's the final video that's the review of videos. We said videos, 18 to 24. So total of each page, and hopefully you have a perfect score of 45 if you got everything right. Divide your 45 into your numerator, get a decimal, and move it 2 places to the right to get your percent. And that's the final video on solving trig equations in this unit. So if you're the first time here, then if you like my video, click on the like button, click on the subscribe button. If you want to be a subscriber, visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information from me, videos, and the content on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.